about the damage and, lives impacted?
Absolutely. It'll probably take hours, if not days, to really get a better idea of the scope, the magnitude of this disaster. Areas that have been hit by the earthquake are simply not accessible from the capital of Port-au-Prince. That'll make getting aid to those areas very, very difficult. The Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister of Haiti, we should add, has said that he will be traveling there as soon as he can. He will be bringing aid with him. He'll be trying to get to some of these cut off areas. There are aid groups on the ground already in Haiti that will be trying to help as well. And of course, more aid is expected to be necessary as they go forward. The images really just tell the story, though. You see the enormous buildings completely pancaked that have fallen to the ground with people inside, people still being pulled from the rubble, many people being treated in the open air because it's just not safe to put them back inside buildings that could collapse if aftershocks continue as they are expected to do so. And then of course you have a tropical storm Grace, that is expected to impact Haiti in the coming days, and that will just make an even more complicated situation even more dangerous. So as always seems to be the case, Haiti just has too much to deal with than its government, that its people can handle. So the government has asked for help. They're expected to receive help, but it probably will not come soon enough for so many Haitians.
This is the location of where that 7.2 magnitude quake was. Here is the city of Port-au-Prince. You can see it was just off to the west. A lot of comparisons being made to that quake that happened in 2010. This one being a little bit stronger, but a little bit farther away from that very populated city. One thing to note too is the amount of people that felt this particular quake. When you look at the population of it, 500,000 people felt very strong or severe shaking. 5 million people felt that moderate shaking. Again, starting to see a lot of those damage pictures and videos coming in. One thing to note about the damage is a lot of these buildings are now structurally compromised because of that initial quake. So any subsequent aftershocks that you get could contribute to additional damage. Even if the buildings looking at them for now don't appear to be damaged, they could have that underlying damage. We've already had at least one 5.2 aftershock, several in the 4.0 range, and more of them are expected not only today, but in the coming days. This is not something that just goes away right after. A big concern is going to be Tropical Storm Grace, right now just east of the Leeward Islands, but the track does take it directly over the island of Hispaniola, including Dominican Republic and Haiti. So Haiti, a lot of these folks that are out there doing cleanup, trying to do recovery efforts, they are going to have to contend with gusty winds, very heavy rainfall at times, especially as we go into the day Monday and into Tuesday. We could be looking at 2 to 4 inches of rain on top of this area as they're continuing to do the cleanup process. Another concern going forward that's still going to be a risk is liquefaction. The bulk of the risk for liquefaction is going to be on that southwest corner. This is Port-au-Prince right here, the epicenter. That liquefaction is really going to be closest to where that epicenter is. For folks who don't know what that is, basically what happens is when you have the initial quake, it destabilizes that soil directly underneath and mixes with the groundwater, effectively making the ground liquefy. It basically just becomes liquid. And that's going to be a concern too, Fred, because not only did this happen because of the quake, but now you're going to be adding rainfall from the tropical storm on top of it.
Oh my gosh, that's a mess. And potentially even more tragic. All right, thank you so much to both of you. I appreciate it, Allison and Patrick. All right, Susan Huff is a seismologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. Susan's with us now. So what does the data tell you about this quake?
Yeah, good afternoon, I guess. So you've already covered a lot of the basic information. It was a slightly larger earthquake than 2010, but significantly farther west than that earthquake, and so that's made all the difference for Port-au-Prince. The shaking was a lot less severe there. It appears that there wasn't too much damage in the capital city. It was the same fault system. It's a complicated fault system as the 2010 event. So we're looking at the data to understand exactly how the faults broke and that kind of thing. The indications are that the earthquake broke to the west. The rupture actually moved on the fault to the west, which would have been helpful in this case because it would have concentrated the strongest shaking in that direction, and the tip of the peninsula is relatively sparsely populated.
So the difference in the quake from 2010, apparently these areas are a little bit more than 100 kilometers apart. But some of your colleagues, and a lot less populated in this seaport town, but some of your colleagues at the USGS are estimating that this quake could have a substantial impact on the populace and could lead to the deaths of thousands of people. So based on what data are those estimates being made?
So we can estimate the shaking severity from the earthquake, and then from that there are ways to estimate the impact on people, including loss of life. That's not a very precise science because it depends on a lot of things that we can't estimate in advance. The largest city that experienced strong shaking is Lakai on the southern peninsula. It has a lot of vulnerable concrete construction, and so the question is, was shaking as strong as we expect on average in that one location? Was it maybe slightly lower than average for various reasons? And so the estimates of fatalities are often very, very wide. But yeah, no, this was big enough. There are enough people in the area. There's so much vulnerable construction that we're braced for the losses. Not on a par of 2010. That was a much more direct hit on a capital city.
So tell me more about the differences or comparisons you're able to make to 2010. Yes, you've established the population differences of the areas hit, but what have you learned about the way in which this earthquake occurred? You said it is generally the same fault line from 2010, but what other comparisons or contrasts are you able to make?
Well, so it was centered farther west. It was farther away from Port-au-Prince. And then it appears to have ruptured towards the west, and that sends the energy, it focuses it in the direction that the fault is actually breaking. And so that would have put Port-au-Prince behind the earthquake, if you will. Though the shaking in Port-au-Prince was significantly lower, and that's the big difference.
All right, well, we are, of course, all bracing and hoping for the best possible outcome for the people there. Susan Huff at the USGS, thank you so much for your time and expertise. Appreciate it.